listen to it while you're trying to fall asleep, go to work, or just spend some time relaxing. Let's start. Chapter 1. The pot starts to boil. The annual Willow Creek Summer Gala was less about community spirit and more about who was with whom, and most importantly, who was desperately trying to keep their secrets under wraps. Stephanie Dubious, with her perfectly coiffed blonde hair and a smile that could cut glass, surveyed the ballroom with the predatory gaze of a hawk. She was the undisputed queen of Willow Creek's social scene, not because she was the wealthiest, though she was comfortable, but because she was the most adept at collecting and distributing the juiciest tea. Tonight's main event, beyond the overpriced champagne, was the return of Julian Thorne. Julian, the town's golden boy, had left 5 years ago under a cloud of whispers involving a scandal that no one could quite pinpoint, clearly referencing financial impropriety and a certain missing ledger. He just inherited his estranged aunt's estate, the sprawling Thorne Manor, which had been decaying for decades and was back to claim his legacy. Darling, you simply must tell me, Stephanie purred to Brenda Higgins, who practically vibrated with nervous excitement. Brenda was a human sponge for gossip, but a terrible sieve. What do you make of Julian's sudden reappearance and that rather unusual guest he arrived with? Brenda nearly choked on her canopy. Oh, Stephanie, you noticed too. She's a bit much, isn't she? All that crimson satin. Definitely not Satan. Satin. And the way she just looks at him. Brenda lowered her voice to a dramatic whisper, leaning so close her pearl necklace nearly clinked against Stephanie's. I heard from Mrs. Gable, her niece works at the land registry office, that Julian didn't just inherit Thorne Manor, he inherited a mountain of debt. And this woman, I heard her name is Vesper, is a consultant from the city helping him restructure his assets. But the way they were restructuring in the Rose Garden, Brenda fanned herself dramatically. Let's just say it wasn't about property deeds. Stephanie's eyes gleamed. A consultant, you say? How modern. And restructuring in the Rose Garden. Why, Brenda, you've stumbled upon a whole tea party. I wonder if his estranged this story goes. Let's take a sip of our tea first. Delicious. I added 2 spoons of sugar. I hope you like it sweet. Let's move on to chapter 2. The kettle whistles. Yeah, okay, let's go. The next few days in Willow Creek were a blur of hushed phone calls and frantic coffee shop meetings. Stephanie, of course, was at the epicenter. She let the Julian's scandalous consultant rumor simmer for just long enough, allowing it to percolate through the town's various social circles. Then she added her own far more potent ingredient. She casually dropped by Pastor Miller's weekly bake sale, known more for its clandestine information exchange than its mediocre muffins. Pastor, she began, her voice dripping with mock concern. I'm so worried about poor Julian Thorne. All this talk about his financial situation, and now with his mysterious consultant Vesper causing such a stir. Did you know she was spotted wearing a rather distinctive emerald pendant? The one I believe that went missing from the Thorne family vault right around the time Julian initially left town. Pastor Miller, a man who saw himself as the moral compass but secretly adored a good scandal, nearly dropped his tray of shortbread. The Emerald of Willow Creek, the one lost during the incidents 5 years ago, he whispered, his voice wide. Stephanie, are you suggesting? I'm merely asking questions, Pastor, Stephanie said, holding up her hands innocently, though her smile was anything but. But it does make one wonder, doesn't it, if the consultant is wearing family heirlooms and Julian is supposedly deep in debt. Well, where exactly did that pendant resurface from, and why now, conveniently on the neck of a woman who seems to be more than just a financial advisor? The tea was no longer just about infidelity. It was brewing a full-blown conspiracy, linking Julian's past departure to Vesper's current presence and the missing jewel. Meanwhile, Celeste, Julian's estranged wife, had unexpectedly arrived in town, drawn by the news of his inheritance and perhaps a lingering sense of duty. She was staying at the quaint local inn, and Stephanie made sure she accidentally ran into her. Celeste, darling, it's been ages. Stephanie gushed, air-kissing the air beside Celeste's cheeks. I was just saying how much the town missed you, and you've returned just in time for all the excitement. Julian's back, and with such a vibrant companion, and the Thorn Emerald has made a rather dramatic reappearance, apparently in her possession. Celeste, who had been trying to maintain a facade of calm indifference, visibly stiffened. Exactly. that is the end of chapter 2. Are you excited to know what happens in the final chapter? I am too. Let's take a sip of the tea first. It's so tasty. Chapter 3. Spilled all over the linen. The climax of the Willow Creek scandal erupted at the Willow Creek Historical Society's charity luncheon, an event usually as dull as dishwater. Why dishwater out of everything that's dull in life? Anyway, Stephanie had made sure Celeste and Vesper were seated at opposing ends of the main table, giving everyone a prime view of the impending fireworks. Julian, looking increasingly harried, tried to play the charming host, but he was clearly sweating. Vesper, draped in the controversial emerald pendant, caught Celeste's eye across the floral centerpiece. A smirk played on Vesper's lips. Celeste, fueled by Stephanie's pointed observations and her own seething resentment, decided she'd had enough of the whispers. "Excuse me," Celeste said, her voice cutting through the polite hum of conversation. "But Mrs. Vesper, isn't that a rather familiar piece of jewelry you're wearing?" She rose from her seat, her gaze fixed on the pendant. The thorn emerald, if I'm not mistaken, a family heirloom that mysteriously vanished 5 years ago. Coincidentally, around the time my husband also made a rather hasty exit from the Willow Creek. A collective gasp swept through the room. Forks clattered. The real tea was about to be served, scalding hot and straight from the pot. Vesper, however, didn't flinch. She simply smiled, a slow, predatory grin that sent shivers down the spines of the town patriarchs. "Oh, this old thing," she purred, fingering the emerald. "Julian gave it to me, a token of his appreciation for my consulting services, shall we say. He found it quite conveniently tucked away in an old shoebox in the attic of Thorn Manor. Apparently, it was his little secret stash from before he left." She paused, letting that sink in. "He said he needed it for a fresh start, and it seems startling that I am his fresh start." Julian, mortified, finally stood up, his face a ghastly shade of white. "Vesper, that's enough," he stammered, but it was too late. The truth, or at least Vesper's version of it, was spilling all over the linen. "Enough," Vesper laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. Oh, but the fun is just beginning, Julian. Tell everyone, darling, about how you actually came back. Not because of some grand inheritance, but because you leveraged this very manure and a few other assets to pay off a rather inconvenient gambling debt you accumulated during your absence. And how I, your consultant, am actually here to make sure you do pay, one way or another." She took Julian's arm, pulling him close, her eyes never leaving Celeste. "This emerald, it's collateral, dear, Even Julian, it seems, is a bit of alone now. The entire room erupted in a cacophony of gasps, whispers, and outright exclamations. The scandal was far grander, far more sordid than anyone had imagined. Julian wasn't just a recovering golden boy, he was a gambler in deep trouble, and Vesper wasn't his mistress, but a ruthless collector. The missing ledger, the initial disappearance, the inheritance, it all clicked into place. A tapestry of deceit and desperation. Stephanie Dubious watched it all unfold, a look of pure, unadulterated delight on her face. This wasn't just tea, this was a whole steaming pot of scandal, poured out generously for everyone to consume. And she, Stephanie, had been the one to boil the water and set the table. Willow Creek would be talking about this for years. The rumors, the whispers, the outright accusations. It was all gloriously, shamelessly delicious. And that's the end of our stories, besties. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know if such plots are interesting to you. I apologize for mispronouncing some words. This is kinda out of my vocabulary. I'm not sure why the stories use